In Boys Crazy, she kidnaps several times with the help of Candy and Grinda.
She saves them from an abusive boss. She didn't kidnap them at all.
She then proceeds to teach them nothing about the real world and keeps them essentially as human pets.
She's keeping them hidden from their boss so that they are safe. The reason she's keeping them isn't because she wanted to teach them anything about the human world. What exactly are you suggesting she teach them?
While the boys are happier under Mabel's care, they are nowhere near as safe, and they certainly aren't free.
But the reasons why they aren't safe or free have nothing to do with Mabel.
When their producer is locked up and the boys should be free to go, Mabel lies to them against Candy and Grinda's word and has the boys throw the two of them out.
This part I agree with. That did piss me off, and it's the reason why Boys Crazy is my least favourite episode of the whole series.
In one of the mini-sodes of Bottomless Pit, Truth Ache, Mabel gives Stan a magic pair of teeth that only allow him to tell the truth. Why? Because she thinks lying is wrong.
Is there something wrong with her thinking that? This sounds more like a criticism of the setup for the story being kind of thin, rather than a fault in Mabel's character. Just as a side note, I've heard some people argue that the stories from Bottomless Pit aren't canon, and therefore you can't really use them as evidence for arguments about the characters in the show. But I disagree personally. Even if the stories aren't canon, you still expect the main cast to act in character in those stories.
In Love God, she tries to help Robbie feel better by promising to play matchmaker for him.
Okay, firstly, I think you're overlooking the fact that Mabel does have good intentions here. Robbie is depressed and she wants to make him feel better by finding him a girlfriend. Now, I've heard some people suggest that Mabel's attempts to help Robbie are for selfish ends. She only wanted to make Robbie happy so that she can be happy as a result, as indicated by her line in the episode, "How can I be happy when I know someone else is sad?" Well, firstly, I would argue that it doesn't really matter what her motivations are to make Robbie feel better. She's still trying to help someone. That can only be a good thing. Second, when you really think about it, isn't everything we do for selfish ends on at least some level? We give money to charity to make us feel better and because the idea of others suffering makes us feel depressed. We socialize with friends because we enjoy it and we don't want to feel lonely. Some of us have kids for the satisfaction of raising a child and knowing that we played a part in keeping the human race going. I'm not saying it's wrong to do any of these things, of course it isn't. I'm merely saying that the idea it's wrong to do something for selfish reasons is just ludicrous to me, because by that logic, we should never do anything. Wow, I got really sidetracked there. Anyway, back to the video.
She straight fucking steals Love God's free will be gone love potions and ignores his warnings and just forces the two of them into love anyways.
The love god never really made sense to me. He goes around making people fall in love all over the place for no more reason than just they looked right together or just for the sake of it. He hardly seemed like the expert he claimed to be. But then when Mabel asked if she could use it to match up two people she put actual thought into getting together, he won't let her. She also asked if she could use some first, and even offered to pay for it even though she has no money. The love god didn't exactly come across as the sort of person that knew what he was talking about. I always got the impression he wouldn't let her use it just because it was his thing and he didn't want anyone else getting involved. So it seems reasonable to me that she decides to steal it. And like I said before, she made Robbie happy in the end, so she was doing something good here.
Mabel and Dipper use Ford's mind-controlling tie to throw out all of Stan's thoughts, opinions, and behaviors in order to win the election for him. The show literally comments on how screwed this is before they do it.
Dipper actually said ethically ambiguous, but I guess it means much the same thing. However, the reason they decided to do it was because Stan was a terrible candidate, and he was also the only person that could stop Bud from becoming mayor. Also, keep in mind the tie was Ford's and Dipper was the one that made the decision to use it. Plus, Mabel says to Stan near the beginning, "We're not saying we don't think you can do it," and also chooses to only start controlling him if he was doing badly. Plus, when Mabel tested out the tie on Zeus, we got one of the funniest scenes of the entire series.
And keep in mind, they were entirely willing to do this before they knew that Bud Gleeful was running for mayor so that he could pardon Gideon.
Sure, but they suspected Bud was up to something right from the start. Finding out he was planning to get Gideon out of prison was merely confirmation that they were right.
In Blendin's game, she almost sentences Blendin to death.
She's called out on that right away, and it was just a stupid joke anyway. Plus, she does give him pretty hair right after that.
But I hope seeing all these examples together has started to show you just how fucked up Mabel can be sometimes for no good reason.
There are good reasons, actually, and I've already been over them.
Point number 3. Mabel was a direct contributor to Weirdmageddon. There are 2 pivotal moments where everything hinged on her, and she made a conscious, fully accountable choice that ended up causing Weirdmageddon. After having everything she knows about Stan called into question, still trusts Stan over Dipper and allows the portal to activate. Imagine that. Your own twin sister not trusting you when the very fate of the world might hang in the balance.
Okay, well the first act of not pressing the button and keeping the portal open was actually a good thing because it helped free Ford. Also, I don't know if simply choosing to trust someone that's cared for you the whole summer is really such a bad thing. It might have been a bit foolish if she turned out to be wrong to trust him, but I don't think that makes her a bad person. Now, of course, it was a good thing that had unfortunate side effects later on, but Mabel couldn't have known that at the time. Plus, Stan is the one that built the portal and insisted that it be opened so that he could have his brother back. If Mabel had known the reason Stan wanted it opened, as well as the possible risk, she probably would have pressed the button. Stan, however, did know these things and still wanted it opened, so whatever blame Mabel deserves for the rift is a fraction of the blame that Stan deserves. Also, don't forget she was planning to press it until she looked into Stan's eyes when he asked if she thought he was a bad person. So it's not that she never thought Dipper might be right, she just decided in the moment that he was mistaken. In fact, I don't even think it's a case of Mabel not trusting Dipper. I mean, think about it, Dipper didn't actually know anything at this point, or at least he didn't know any more than Mabel. Meanwhile, Stan knew what the consequences would be if the portal opened. Dipper and Mabel had no idea, they just had reason to suspect it might be bad. So for me, Mabel's decision to trust Stan seems fairly logical.
It was in Dipper and Mabel versus the future, where her selfishness is exploited by Bill in order to unleash Weirdmageddon. You can blame Bill for being the one that tricks her, but ultimately she was the weak link, and because of her actions, the world almost ended.
And like I said before, keep in mind she was an emotional wreck at this point, she didn't know that was Bill, and she didn't know what that thing she gave him was, and therefore had no reason to think it might be dangerous. It utterly baffles me how many people think Mabel is at fault here.
In Mabelland, she knows that she's in some sort of trap by Bill, and she doesn't even care. At no point is it implied that she's under some kind of spell or mind control. It's her entirely conscious, fully accountable choice to stay in Mabelland and impede the correcting of the apocalypse that she caused!
Isn't that kind of the point of the episode? That she learns by the end that she was wrong to feel that and ultimately chooses to leave? Is it really so bad she doesn't want to leave when the world outside is so bad? Also, I wouldn't say that she caused the apocalypse. She just inadvertently played a part in it happening.
In fact, she actively made it harder to save, thanks to all of the time spent and peril faced convincing her out of her own selfishness and unwillingness to grow up.
Unwillingness to grow up? She's only 12. I guess you are saying that that's no excuse. She needs to grow up faster because of the situation they are in now. But isn't it more interesting from a narrative standpoint to have one character that is willing to grow up and face up to the situation they are in? Dipper, and another who isn't? Mabel? The flaws in Mabel's character help to serve the plot and give us a more satisfying story. Basically, the things you are complaining about here are the reason we even have a story in the first place.
Point number 4. Mabel never apologized for her biggest mistakes.
Firstly, I'm not sure what you want her to apologize for. Is it allowing herself to be tricked by Bill when she was an emotional wreck? Seems a bit petty.
She seems to learn no lessons throughout the entire show. Even after the literal main antagonist of the show gives her flack about it.
When did Bill ever give her flack for not breaking up with Gideon? This is actually something I loved. A callback to the 4th episode of the show, right before the finale. That's some awesome continuity.
In fact, if anything, she even gets a little worse, because most of her worst offenses are after sock opera.
I'm not sure I understand this point. She learns in sock opera that Dip has sacrificed a lot for her, and she's not really done much for him in return. But I don't think that means she shouldn't still be upset with Dipper when he says he's staying with Ford. But even if that's debatable, it certainly doesn't mean she should have stopped doing the quote-unquote bad things you mention here, as none of them are at Dipper's expense, aside from maybe trusting Stan in not what he seems. But I've already been over why I feel that was still right. I guess you're talking about her lack of growth as a character in general. Well, like I said before, the lack of character growth is one of the weaker things about this show, but that's true of every character, not just Mabel.
She never apologizes for anything she does during Weirdmageddon, and not once does she say she's sorry, or show any serious remorse or admittance that she fucked things up.
Okay, so I guess your issue is that she never verbally uses the words, "I'm sorry," in regards to what happened. But does that mean she doesn't apologize? I don't think so. It's quite a common thing in fiction, especially in the visual medium of TV and film, for the characters to express certain things through their actions or facial expressions. It's just a much more effective way of getting it across. I feel like the awkward sibling hug is probably the best example of where she's showing that she's sorry. Plus, you can still be sorry without ever actually saying it, so if anything, her not saying sorry shows how strong the bond is between the two of them. Love means never having to say you're sorry. Corny, I know, but very true. You say cruel. To me, that scene was very touching.
All we get out of her is her telling Dipper,
I appreciate what you said back there, but if you want to take Ford's apprenticeship, I won't get in your way.
Miss out on your awkward teen years? You wish.
My god, you actually played a clip of her saying to Dipper she's okay with him taking Ford's apprenticeship after you criticised her reaction to this news before. Are you really just going to ignore this? See, this is kind of an example of the major flaw with this entire video. You seem to just ignore a lot of important details to make Mabel's behaviour more understandable. Some might argue that they still don't make her actions forgivable, but you need to at least acknowledge these things, otherwise you just come across as a bit narrow-minded. Now we come to his conclusion, which takes a slightly, I'm sure unintentional, turn for the egotistical, because he asks in terms of the writing of the character,
so how is it that Mabel came to be such a terrible person in retrospect?
As if that's now an unarguable fact that he's just proven. Now, maybe that's too harsh. In a lot of ways, I like the fact that he's asking this because it shows a lot of respect for the show's writing staff, that he feels that everything in the show happens for a very specific reason. I can also tell from the way he's saying it that it hurts a little inside that he feels he has to criticise this show, which he clearly loves as much as I do. But as to your question, CC West, it's pretty simple really. She isn't. She's only that in your eyes. Okay, to be fair, he goes into a little more detail about the specific ways in which he feels things could have been written differently. If you do that, there's no logical reason for Mabel not to let them out when Dipper asks. But maybe that's what you mean. If Dipper goes in there on his own, Mabel will just let him out and the story can no longer progress in the way it needs to. You see the problem here? That kind of is what happened. Dipper suspected Bud was up to something. He was just confirmed to be right later on. What, and carry it all the way to the pool? Why? How is she going to buy one when she has no money? As for not saying how she got it, that sounds a bit lazy if you ask me. Like, I can see people saying, oh, I guess she just happened to have a cooler. This one I don't even understand. Why would Zeus doing it be any better? It's not like Mabel was even the one that triggered it, as you can clearly see in the clip he plays. Is that not a good reason? What better reason do you have in mind? Are you seriously saying she's a bad person because she feels bad for Robbie? I've already been over why I think her reasons for doing this are not really that bad, but it was just an accident. You even show that in the clip you played. Is Mabel really a bad person for accidentally letting the flashlight fly out of her hands? I don't think you could really fault her for it. It's just one of those things that happen sometimes. Also, how and why would Gideon steal it? They'd need to explain that. So now she has to apologise in the finale as well? For something she did 3 episodes previous? Why? You'd rather see some pointless verbalizing of Mabel being sorry than just having the final episode properly wrap things up? That really just doesn't make sense to me. Clearly you are just all about the idea of Mabel saying the words "I'm sorry" being the most important thing when it comes to bringing the show to a satisfying ending. While I just don't see the point at all. I think that's just something we'll have to agree to disagree on.
I refuse to believe that this is coincidence.
What is? That you've continued to misread, misunderstand, and massively overreact to Mabel's actions, overlooking a lot of good things she's done, as well as ignoring key details that make some of the things she does a lot more understandable, while also giving every other character that's just as much in the wrong, if not more so, a free pass? Well, I think you're the only one that knows that for sure.
Was there no time in the finale to have her apologize?
Boy, you really are bitter about that, aren't you? Like I said before, I don't like the idea of a character apologising for something they did 3 episodes previous. Also, what have you got against giving all the characters a proper send-off? She may have inadvertently caused Weirdmageddon, but she also helped end it. For me, that's enough.
Was there no thought to how making her the problem of so many episodes would reflect on her later?
Got to disagree with the text on screen here. The only time I'd say what happened was entirely her fault is in Boys Crazy.
Was it a purposeful jab at Ariel Hirsch?
Wow, that's dark. You even admit that with the text on screen, so why even suggest it? Plus, why would he have Mabel do a lot of good things in the show if he only made the show to trash her? Why would he make her one of the main characters? And since Dipper is based on Alex, why would the two of them have such a strong bond if Alex secretly just wanted to trash her?
It's not likely we'll ever get an answer.
I think I can probably answer it. I think you've just misread a lot of what Mabel did, being far worse than it actually is, while overlooking a lot of bad things other characters did. Okay, I guess that's it. There's an outro about his channel in general, which is an awesome channel by the way, but that was all he had to say about Mabel. So in conclusion, this video is puzzling to me. ZC West seems like an intelligent and well-educated person who clearly knows the show and the characters really well. So how he's misunderstood a lot of the things Mabel does in the show, overlooks a lot of important details that make her actions more justified, and ignores the actions of other characters is really beyond me. Like I said at the start, if you found this video through his channel, I'm not hating on the guy. I just don't agree with him in the case of this video. Well, thanks for watching till the end, guys. I know this was a very long video. If you want to watch the original video this is a response to, the link is on screen now. But the other link is another video I'm thinking of doing a response like this to. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you again soon.